They left him to die, just a blind puppy with a brown cloth over his eyes, dropped in the freezing woods of Colorado like trash. But what happened next, no one could have imagined. A lioness, fierce and wild, should have seen him as nothing but weakness, but instead, she did the unthinkable. She brought him home. She fed him, protected him, loved him as her own, and from that day on. The cameras didn't just capture wildlife, they captured a miracle, one that reminds us, love doesn't ask what you are, it answers who you belong to. Before we begin this unforgettable story, would you mind sharing where you're from in the comments, and if stories of love, loyalty, and second chances move you? Please give this video a like and consider subscribing. Morning broke cold and quiet over Grand Mesa, Colorado. Frost clung to the edges of fallen pine needles, and a ghostly fog hovered just above the snow-dusted earth. The wind moved slowly through the evergreens, soft and whispering, as if the forest itself were still asleep. It was early winter, and the air tasted like ice and distance. From the edge of a service road, where the man-made path gave way to wilderness, a lone figure emerged from the mist. He was tall, wrapped in an old military jacket stained at the sleeves. His boots, worn and quiet, left no trail. His face was hidden beneath a beanie pulled low, and the collar of his coat was turned up high. No name, no trace, only a purpose carried out in silence. In his arms, tucked inside a weathered wool blanket, was a puppy. The pup was small, barely 3 months old, a young German shepherd with soft sable fur and slightly oversized ears that hadn't yet learned to stand. His breathing was light and nervous, and over his face was tied a soft brown cloth, snug around his head. The blindfold had been wrapped gently, though it was not for training or warmth. The puppy had been born blind, and someone, somewhere, had decided that was reason enough to give him up. The man paused at the boundary where the human world ended and the protected sanctuary began. A few steps beyond lay thickets of fir and tangled underbrush, stretching into hundreds of acres of monitored wilderness, without a word. He bent down and placed the pup at the base of a cedar tree, just beside a half-buried rock. The puppy whimpered softly, his nose twitched, searching the air. But the man did not stay. He stood, turned, and walked back into the fog. Within moments, he was gone. The puppy, blind, alone, and confused, sniffed the earth beneath him, cold, damp, unfamiliar. His world was already a canvas of shadow and scent, and now it smelled of moss, pine, and the faint trace of human sorrow. He stepped forward hesitantly, his tiny paws trembling in the frost. The brown cloth over his eyes shifted slightly with each movement, muffling the wind, dampening the light he would never see. He moved by instinct, not destination. A fallen twig startled him, and he stumbled sideways. Then, without warning, his front paw slipped into a shallow dip in the terrain. The earth gave way. With a soft yelp, the pup tumbled down a gentle incline, rolling through damp leaves and patches of frost-bitten grass. He landed at the bottom of a narrow, mossy depression in the forest floor. The fall wasn't far, but for a pup so small and disoriented, it was a collapse into the unknown. He lay still, his ribs rose and fell with fast, shallow breaths, his ears perked, listening to a world he could only touch and smell. And for a long moment, there was only silence, but not far from where he had fallen, just beyond a screen of ivy-draped rock and low winter bramble. A lioness stirred, Nala, an Asiatic lioness, lay curled around 3 newborn cubs inside a shallow den carved by time and roots. Her body was lean but strong, her fur the color of faded sun, her breath slow and deep. The den was shielded by overgrown brush and a canopy of pine, warmed by her body and the cluster of cubs nestled at her side. She had chosen this place carefully, a quiet patch near a natural spring, hidden from the wind and away from the main trails of the sanctuary. But something in the air shifted, a sound, a scent, small, foreign, not predator, not prey. Her ears flicked, her muscles tensed, still. She did not rise, not yet. Outside the den, just a few dozen feet away, the blind puppy lay curled in the cold, his brown blindfold damp with dew, his small chest shuddering. And so, the morning deepened, the mist curling like breath through the trees. Two creatures, one abandoned, the other a mother, lay separated only by chance and silence. But soon, that silence would be broken. The early morning fog had begun to thin, retreating slowly into the treetops as light filtered down through the pine canopy. Grand Mesa was beginning to stir. The chill remained, crisp and biting. But the sun's slow climb offered a fragile warmth. Somewhere deeper in the sanctuary, a squirrel darted through dry leaves, and the air began to fill with the subtle hum of life awakening. Nayla opened her eyes. The lioness had not slept deeply. Her ears had twitched through the night, alert to shifts in the wind, the faintest rustle of movement. She had grown used to the patterns of the forest around her, deer trails, coyote howls from a distant ridge, even the steady buzz of the sanctuary's hidden cameras. But this scent was new. She lifted her head. Her breath plumed out in soft clouds. The three cubs at her side shifted slightly but stayed nestled against her warmth. They were just over a month old, plump, still wobbling when they walked, and always reaching for her belly to nurse. Nala rose. Her movements were quiet, fluid. The golden fur along her shoulders caught the morning light as she crept forward, her body weaving through the shadows like liquid muscle. She followed the scent, faint, unfamiliar, but not alarming. It held no signature of fear, no metallic trace of blood or threat, just something small. When she reached the edge of the shallow ravine, she paused. There, lying in a bed of crushed leaves and moss, was a creature unlike any she had seen in these parts. Not a cub, not a rabbit, a pup, tiny, motionless, covered in mud. The wind shifted, and she inhaled deeper. No sharpness of predator, no musky panic of prey. The scent was soft, almost sad. The pup's body was curled tightly, and over its face was a strip of brown cloth. Strange. His breathing was quick and shallow, and when Nala stepped closer, one of his ears flicked. She leaned down, lowering her great head to the tiny bundle. Rusty didn't move. He could feel the air change, could sense something massive near him, but he didn't cry out. His body was too tired, too cold, too small. Nala's nose brushed his back gently. She sniffed, once, twice. Her tongue emerged and licked the dirt from the fur between his shoulders. Still no reaction. Just the smallest, trembling sound. A whimper so soft it could have been mistaken for the wind. But it wasn't wind. It was need. It was helplessness. Something shifted in her chest. That sound. She'd heard something like it before. Not from her own cubs, but long ago. In a burning forest, when her mother had nudged her forward before being swallowed by flame. That helplessness had once belonged to her. Nala stepped forward and nudged the puppy with her nose again. This time, he stirred. A weak attempt at movement, his front paw pushing lightly against the ground before curling back. His breath hitched. The lioness looked around, ensuring no other predators had caught the scent. Then, as if acting on instinct older than memory, she leaned down and gently took the puppy by the scruff of his neck. Rusty didn't resist. His small body hung limp in her jaws, legs dangling, blindfold fluttering slightly as Nala began the slow walk back to her den. Her steps were cautious, designed not to jostle the delicate form she carried. Her own cubs watched as she emerged through the brush, eyes wide and blinking at the sight of their mother, returning with something that was not them. Nala padded into the hollow and set Rusty down beside her three golden cubs. They sniffed at the new arrival, but didn't retreat, curious but unafraid. They touched noses to his fur, then turned their attention back to their mother. The pup stirred, barely. A soft exhale escaped him, and he rolled onto his side. Nala circled the group, then lay down once more, curling her body protectively around all four. Just a few miles away, a different kind of morning was unfolding at the sanctuary's monitoring station. Seated before a bank of screens was Deputy Warden Harper Lane, a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s with a weathered face and thinning sandy hair tucked beneath a gray beanie. His posture was relaxed but focused. Harper had spent the last 10 years overseeing animal movements from this very spot. He sipped coffee from a metal thermos, eyes scanning the slow-moving images across the monitors. Most cameras focused on the central grazing fields and the river bend where elk usually gathered at dawn. But one screen, zoomed in on a rockier, less traveled section of Zone 7 caught his attention. Movement, unscheduled, subtle. Harper leaned in. The footage was grainy, but unmistakable. A large female lion, Nala, was emerging from the shadows, something small dangling from her jaws. He squinted. That's not one of hers. He tapped a few keys, zooming in as far as the camera allowed. Then he saw it, a pup, no collar, covered in mud, small, limp. It looked like a German shepherd. Too young to be out here alone. And there was something else. A dark cloth wrapped over its eyes. Harper exhaled slowly, setting the thermos down. Well, I'll be damned. The wind was softer that morning, brushing gently through the tall pines that stood like silent sentinels above Grand Mesa. Light spilled slowly over the ridges, crawling into the shaded hollows of the forest, where the sanctuary's secrets lay untouched by time or interference. In the heart of one such hollow, tucked beneath a curve of rock and thick fern cover, the den remained still, save for the soft sounds of breath and the occasional rustle of fur against fur. Inside, 4 small bodies lay tangled together in the warmth of survival. Rusty, the blind German shepherd puppy with the brown cloth tied gently across his eyes, no longer whimpered in confusion, though the world around him remained unseen. It had begun to make a different kind of sense. He knew the rhythm of the lioness's breath, slow and steady, like waves against a distant shore. He knew the quiet squeaks and thumps of the lion cubs when they played nearby, the way their small paws patted across the soft floor of the den, the unique scent of each one mingling with his own. He had learned, by instinct and repetition, to press his body close to the warmest spot in the den. When Nala lay on her side, he would inch his way to her belly, nudging carefully past paws and fur. He could not see where to nurse, but she helped guide him, using her massive head to gently direct him to the right place, just as she did with her own cubs. Her milk was warm and strong. Rusty latched on, uncertain at first, but nature did the rest. The lion cubs, 3 in total, each only slightly larger than Rusty, had reacted with confusion when the strange-smelling creature first appeared. He didn't move like them, he didn't sound like them, and he certainly didn't look like them. At first, they watched him cautiously, sniffing from a short distance while he lay curled near their mother. But that distance closed quickly. On the second night, the boldest of the cubs, marked by a darker stripe down his back, pressed against Rusty while sleeping. When Rusty didn't move, the others followed. By the third night, the 4 were indistinguishable beneath the curve of Nala's flank. A single, breathing mass of fur and paws and the quiet comfort of something sacred, belonging. Atop a small ridge not far from the den, a camouflaged wildlife camera embedded in a hollow tree captured everything from its tiny lens. Footage streamed silently to a server deep in the sanctuary's ranger station, where it was later reviewed as part of the daily data sweep. That morning, when the feed played back, a still frame was paused. On the screen, a lioness, her body curled protectively around her 3 cubs, and a 4th figure, unmistakably canine, nestled at her belly. No one said anything at first. There was only the quiet hum of the server and the frozen image on the screen. A pup, a dog, blind, small, and impossibly out of place. And yet, in that moment, there was no tension, no claws, no teeth, only warmth, only peace. Night descended quietly over the forest, wrapping Grand Mesa in a hush broken only by the rustle of dry pine needles and the occasional hoot of an owl. The stars blinked faintly behind a thin veil of cloud, and a low wind moved through the trees in waves, like something breathing across the landscape. Inside the den, beneath a low rock shelf and ringed by frostbitten ivy, all was calm. Nala slept with her cubs curled against her belly, their small bodies rising and falling in time with her breath. Beside them, nestled close, was Rusty, the blind German shepherd pup with a soft brown cloth tied over his eyes. Rusty was still, ears twitching lightly in sleep, but then he froze. Something was different, a sound too soft for human ears, but sharp and distinct to his, dry leaves crushed beneath padded feet. A smell, sour, bitter, unfamiliar. Rusty's nose wrinkled, his ears rotated toward the sound, stiffened, and locked in place. A quiet rumble, low and coarse, echoed in the distance. Danger. Though he couldn't see, he knew something was wrong. His body tensed. The hair along his back rose. Without hesitation, he barked, short and sharp, slicing through the stillness like a pebble into still water. The cubs stirred. Nala's head snapped up. Her golden eyes narrowed as she rose to all fours, ears flicking forward. The scent hit her almost immediately, unfamiliar and hostile. A hyena. Another bark from Rusty, louder now, insistent. Nala didn't hesitate. In a flash, she was gone, out of the den and into the brush, a blur of golden muscle. Her growl rose into a full roar that rolled through the trees like thunder, scattering birds from the branches. The den trembled. The cubs whimpered. Rusty crouched low, barking once more. Even as his legs trembled, somewhere out there in the night, the lioness and the hyena clashed. Growls and snarls tangled in the dark. Branches cracked. The ground shook. Then came silence. Moments later, Nala returned, her breath heavy. A small scrape on her shoulder glistening in the moonlight. Her eyes scanned the den quickly. Her cubs safe. Rusty still alert. Head raised. She walked straight to the pup. Lowering herself beside him, she leaned in and began to lick his face gently, cleaning away the sweat and dust, from his blindfold to the tips of his ears. Her tongue passed again and again with care. She licked his back, his paws, his side. Her breathing slowed. Hers was no longer the roar of a warrior, but the calm of a mother. Then, she gave a low growl, soft and steady, almost like a purr. Rusty tilted his head toward her and pressed his small body into her chest, tail giving a weak wag. And for the rest of the night, they stayed that way, lioness and pup, wrapped in silence and safety, as the forest once again grew still. The morning sun spilled over Grand Mesa in soft, honey-colored light, washing the forest in a kind of peace that only comes after survival. Pine branches swayed gently in the early breeze, and somewhere high in the cliffs, a hawk called down over the valley. At the edge of the sanctuary, inside the observation cabin's wood-frame viewing room, Amelia Carter sat completely still, watching the den's live feed on a quiet monitor. She had barely slept. Her dark hair was tied back, though a few strands had slipped loose in the hours since sunrise. Her eyes, tired, amber like the lioness she watched, were fixed on the small figures curled together in the rocky hollow. The footage wasn't high resolution, but she didn't need clarity to see what mattered. On the screen, Nala lay curled around her cubs as usual, but at the center of the golden bodies, nestled against the lioness's chest, was a fourth shape, smaller, darker, blindfolded in brown, Rusty. Amelia took a slow breath. Her fingers hovered over the radio switch, but didn't press it. In the footage, Nala stirred. Her massive head shifted forward and gently, like clockwork. She leaned in and gave a soft, motherly lick across the top of Rusty's head, right over the brown cloth tied around his eyes. The motion was careful, repeated, and natural, as if she had done it 100 times before. Amelia blinked hard, then sat back. She had seen lions reject their own cubs for less. An odd scent, a limp, a moment of weakness. But not Nala. Not this time. Not with him. She glanced over her shoulder toward the opposite end of the room, where Oliver sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, sketchpad propped against one bent knee. The boy's chestnut hair was messy, and his hoodie sleeves were pulled halfway over his hands. His pencil scratched softly across the page. "You're drawing them again?" she asked. Oliver nodded but didn't speak. He tilted the sketchpad slightly so she could see. The image was rough but powerful. Rusty, head lifted slightly, ears perked, surrounded on all sides by the slumbering forms of lion cubs. His brown blindfold was shaded with care, a gentle line of fur where Nala's tongue had passed. Around the group, a soft halo of warmth radiated outward, hinted in pale gold and pencil smudge. Amelia walked over and crouched beside him. "He looks proud." Oliver looked up for a moment, He is. That one word, he is, struck her harder than she expected. Her son rarely spoke in full sentences anymore, since the accident. His world had become a quieter place, a careful one, but when it came to animals, especially this one, his voice always seemed to find a way through. She laid a hand on his shoulder. "Do you think we should bring him in for rehab or placement?" Oliver shook his head immediately. "He belongs there," he said softly. "She chose him." Amelia looked again at the drawing, then at the monitor. She thought of protocols, of intervention, of well-meaning emails from the board that would surely arrive if the story broke wide. But some instincts weren't meant to be analyzed. Some families didn't need to look like families to be real. "Okay," she said, standing up. "We'll let them be." Later that afternoon, down at the sanctuary's public path, where volunteers gave educational tours to schools and summer campers, a small wooden sign was hammered gently into the ground, just outside the perimeter of the ridge where Nala's den lay hidden beyond public access. The sign was simple, hand-carved and stained a dark cedar tone. Oliver had drawn the design, and one of the interns, a red-haired college student named Reese, kind and meticulous, had etched the words with care. "Rusty, the pup who roared with lions." Visitors paused there often in the weeks to follow. They read the sign and asked questions about who Rusty was. The story began to spread quietly, from staff to students, from camera footage to conservation blogs. But Amelia never offered interviews, and no press was invited. Some things, she believed, were sacred. That evening, as dusk fell across Grand Mesa, the den glowed gold with fading light. Inside, Nala yawned, showing the tips of her sharp teeth before curling again around her young, the lion cubs, now playful and tumbling over one another, eventually tired and collapsed into a furry pile beside their mother, Rusty, slow but steady, padded blindly in their direction, guided by scent and sound and memory. He found his place, and when Nala stretched a massive paw over him, resting it gently across his back, he stilled completely. His small tail gave a single, satisfied wag. From a nearby tree, the camera watched silently. A lioness, 3 cubs, and 1 blind puppy with a brown blindfold, no longer abandoned, no longer an outsider, just home. Sometimes, family doesn't come from blood. Sometimes, love finds its way through the most unexpected paths. A blind puppy with a brown blindfold, a lioness with a mother's heart, and a story only God could have written. Rusty's journey reminds us that what the world discards, heaven can still use for something beautiful. In a world that often sees differences as weakness, this little pup became a part of something bigger, not because he fit in, but because he was loved. Perhaps God placed Rusty in Nala's path, not just to be saved, but to teach all of us watching that real family, real protection, and real love come from the heart. Not the species, not the label, not the expectation. It's a miracle that didn't need lightning or thunder, just warmth, instinct, and grace. As you go back to your own life today, remember, you are not forgotten. No matter how small or unseen you feel, God has a place for you, and sometimes that place is right where you least expect it. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment to tell us how it moved you. Share this message with someone who needs a little faith today. And if you believe in the kind of love that crosses every line and breaks every barrier, type Amen in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that reveal the hidden miracles of the animal world and the heart of God behind them. May He bless you and your family today.